You haven't yours in Concord.
No, but I
Oh,
walked through
Dartmouth might
the
have a building there, yeah.
yeah, right across the street from the hospital.
And that would be just outpatient, I guess.
Are we waiting for anything, or should we call the meeting to
No,
order?
I did get the meeting to start, but I was trying to contact Ken because I had to restart the Zoom and it gave a new link. But so,
Is Ken gonna be here?
He's supposed-
Via Zoom,
supposedly.
He told me he was going to try, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but.
So does he have the link?
thing is, it's either you or her that will run the meeting because he's
Well-
gonna be on Zoom.
right, well, I'll start the meeting and then I'll send it over to whoever they nominate,
Okay.
typically.
Of course, Dr. Larry is in the chairman's.
I think
Chairman's seat.
anyone can sit wherever they want.
That's why we left that one empty, right? You didn't know that? You didn't get that memo?
That's the chair of anointment.
First meeting and already king of the hill.
Work, rise to power.
So it is 6:37 PM. My name's Christina Donovan, Planning and Zoning Administrator for the town of Newport. We're gonna start the Conservation Commission meeting this evening. Ken Dennis might be coming in via Zoom, who is the chairperson. The vice chair is out of the country, and I, at this time, would, even prior to the pledge, would like to turn it over to the board and whoever would like to be nominated for running the meeting this evening.
I'd nominate Don as the senior.
Second.
Wait a minute, I'm not seeing You and I are tied for that.
You are the most.
You were here a
I
month before
believe you
us.
are the most.
I think we started on the same, pledge of allegiance
To the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and we should do the roll call.
Kurt Tiller?
Gunter Hubert. Larry Schissel.
Don Shagan. Now, Christina, I see the agenda review. I don't know what that means, actually. Or agenda colon
Basically,
review.
you're supposed to look over the agenda and anyone else, if they see any mistakes or concerns, or possibly if there's anything you'd like to add at this point, we could put it under new business or administration. I will state that the scheduling of the easement monitoring that I hope you guys have all on your agenda,
It is on mine. Yeah.
that I should have mentioned that the contact is Charlotte Harding on there. That's my only change.
Now, the agenda looks fine to me. Any comments?
I don't see any problems.
Okay. So I guess the next item is to approve the minutes from the meeting of March 16, 2022. Do we have any comments on that?
Oh my word.
I will be abstaining because I didn't get a chance to review them.
Did I give you copies here at this table, or did you bring them?
I have mine.
You have yours. I apologize. Has everyone read over them, or would you, I can go print them out right now.
Does anybody need a copy?
I'd abstain because I wasn't a member of my
So it's down to you and me, Gunter, or we defer?
Yeah, I would say I am quite pleased with the minutes as they were.
We don't have enough to vote, though, to approve them.
Oh, because we have two abstaining.
Yes, so I am the,
So we'll have to defer.
I would,
Point of order, could you table them to the next minute, please? Meeting.
Okay. So
Yes.
do I need to make a motion on that?
you do, and I would like you to do it on both the minutes. Please.
I'll move that we table the minutes till, of March 16th and April 6th to our next meeting, which will be in May. Do we have a date?
It has to be exact, so hold on.
think it's May 18th.
May 18th is what it's scheduled. The schedule says anyway.
Yeah, there we go, at 6:30,
Till May 18th
at 6:30.
at 6:30.
Second. Should be something that's just as source.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Because it's coming in off of Zoom. I know. No, you're not connected. Are you connected to an HDMI over there or just to the Ethernet?
I don't know. Are you looking for something
Well, I wanted to
specific?
hook that up to his computer. Do you know how?
Oh, I believe I can make you the host.
Oh, he has to go to Zoom to do that.
I know, can you join?
online. If you can go online, you could go to Zoom and show it through that?
Can I send you a link?
Sure. Yeah, do that. That might be the easiest.
Do you, how's the easiest for me to send that, via your email?
Yeah,
Just give them a piece of paper.
Well,
No,
then
you don't wanna type it
You don't wanna
in,
type all that
it's
in.
5,
and which network should I sign into? They're all password protected.
oh, we don't have, he can't sign into our network here.
Oh, that won't work then.
Oh, then that won't
Oh,
work.
so it won't work, okay, so let me think.
So
How
where's it, so
can-
what are the, aren't these HDMI things connected to this? What are they going around the room for?
Yeah, good question.
They're very attractive.
Could I get,
Right in.
could he use that cable? But it won't attach to the TV.
Well, I wanted to attach it straight to the TV, but it didn't do, it doesn't have, maybe there's an input on this one. See, there's no direct HDMI opening here that just says plug it in.
There's gotta be.
So Larry, are you the new chair? You just step up and away you go. I like it.
Hold on one
Parted
second.
and it was open.
I do think that Larry should give an introduction, that's all of himself and maybe his
I was
background.
gonna say,
Yeah.
well, John and Jeff are working on
All right,
that.
well, let's
Should we
give this
move
a try.
on to some other new business?
Thank you.
Sure,
Let's
they can do
put
that.
this one right here. We're gonna do this.
New member, yes.
Just remember.
So, we have a new member,
And we have good eyes.
and I'm assuming everybody
Okay,
knows who,
hand me,
you what?
yeah, the other end of it.
too much going on, Larry.
There's a lot going on. But yeah, Larry Schissel from North Newport. Happy to be on board.
Glad to have you.
Pretty good.
So do you want to give us a half-hour speech on who you are and your history?
Well, I've been in town since '89, so 30, coming up on 33 years we've been here. And lived up in North Newport 32 of those 33 years. Neighbor just down the street from you. And I did serve on the school committee for 3 years back in '06 to '09 or something like that, so I was pretty busy. Now I've got a lot more free time, retirement,
Come on.
opportunity
There
came
it
up.
is. Okay.
So
Well, it's not changing it though, because I don't know where the input is.
glad to be part of it.
All right, well, thanks. I think we got 3 North Newporters. You're from North Newport too, right?
I'm right in between you two guys.
Well represented.
Dr. Schissel supplies our honey, our family honey.
Oh, was that, well, we bought
Oh,
honey from them
yeah.
too, yep.
Do you publicly sell that?
We do.
This.
Really? I'll have to, because I'm always looking for local honey.
Yeah, we got them last year's,
Try this one.
We lost one, only had 2 hives going into the winter and lost one of them,
No?
which, you know, you
However,
were just happy
I
to
did
get out of the way
locate-
with one.
Which one did I hit
So far,
here?
it looks like a pretty healthy hive, so.
Is that yours?
Do you sell on your property or do you do it at the farmer's market?
Yeah, just right out of the
You got
driveway.
something
Right
there
out
that
of-
looks like a
and you-
background.
I'll keep you in mind.
No,
I'll have to look you up, I use it medicinally
Did I
usually,
have-
so we could, you could move to give Jeff another minute to try to maybe get on the big TV, although I think that might be
Yeah.
difficult.
Well, we want to take up this RSA 36.
No, this was it, right.
Sure.
Yes.
I think this might be your item, RSA 36-A4.
Yeah, I brought that up because of the issue that we had over in Kellyville. we had a complaint.
I was wondering what the status of that was too. Yeah.
And I was talking to Gunter earlier.
Sorry.
The state, as far as we're concerned, we're just supposed to process the paperwork when the complaint is made, rather than actually going to the site, because we have no enforcement ability. And it specifically says in the RSA not to contact, or not to go on the property without specific permission from the property owner. And the state gets the application, or the violation, they inspect, pass judgment, and then our position is just to make sure that whatever judgment they hand down is obeyed. Make sure that the property owner does whatever the state tells them to do. If they don't, we just tell them that, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, and they pursue from there. But as far as physically going there, that's not something we're supposed to do.
Well, it states, it does state specifically, and you could read it yourself, it's 36-A:4 powers, number 2, is no commission, its members or designees shall enter private property, gather data about the property for use in a wetlands designation, prime wetlands designation, natural resource inventory report or map, or natural heritage map without first obtaining permission from the property owner or a lawfully issued warrant. Such permission may be oral or written, and then it goes on blah, blah, blah. Although you weren't going onto the property for wetland designation, prime reporting map, or natural heritage mapping. So you weren't going to gather mapping information. Although, it might be somewhere else in this.
Could it be construed as data, though?
Well, again, you could also go as a private person, I don't think there's no harm, no foul, kind of, is usually what I go by. Were they receptive? They were pretty receptive.
They were receptive,
yeah. They were nice.
See, we weren't there gathering data, we were there to inform them of what was going on, that a complaint had been filed, and that it might be in their best interest to look into it further before they proceed. We weren't telling them to stop. We weren't gathering information, and they were fine with us being there, so.
I was just concerned that the state or the property owner might have a problem with that, so.
Yeah, and in the future, there could be an issue, yeah. So when you say we are supposed to file the paperwork, do you mean the commission?
Yeah, well, no, the violation comes to Christina, and she handles the paperwork.
So you're saying the town?
Yes, correct.
So anyone can file. We have been made aware of violations or complaints of possible violations by me getting the letter that it's already been submitted. This complaint came in from a resident. I asked the resident, are you going to file or are you looking for me to file? He wanted me to file. I would do that for anyone in town, because I know Linda mentioned you really should have. Assist anyone, especially if they actually do believe there's a violation. No one wants to ruin a wetland. But obviously, the commission could also vote on a filing if one of you thought you saw it, or you could go out on your own because you're a member of the public. So you could go many different routes. I think a lot of people might feel comfortable with me because I then bring it to the board, we're made aware of it. I've communicated with the person making the complaint. I have communicated over the phone with the owners of that property.
Your normal procedure is to file it.
Yeah, if I'm asked, or if I see a violation.
Normally will advise us when you know of a complaint.
Absolutely. They all go to you. You actually get copies. And actually, Ken usually goes and checks the mail. Maybe you should be checking it while Ken's out. You have a mailbox here. We should have got a letter about this complaint stating that they're looking into it. And the wetland issue is supposed to be addressed within 7 days, which again, it's
by the state?
Yes. Now, my opinion is there are no wetlands on that property. That's my opinion. Now, obviously, I would double check.
I think that
forming an opinion.
I think that 7-day is a bit different right now, or it was. I mean, we had that one
Yeah,
in
they-
North Maine that was considerably longer.
They
before
don't seem to be very receptive, which I find a little disheartening, and I don't know why COVID would infringe on this unless someone's actually ill and the office is empty, because coming to view isolated wetlands, you can do singularly, by yourself. It's a perfect thing to do. I've worked with FEMA issues that they say they can't, because of COVID, they're not gonna come and I've done the FEMA work here. So it seems odd to me, but, let me call about it.
Yeah, we need more
Again,
background.
I have no record of wetlands on this property.
So that was filed to the state, though?
Yes, and I sent you all a copy of the Lawrence. I might have not, so you might have not been on the list yet. So let me make sure, because I sent, everyone else got the application that I filed. I said, okay, I'll resend that out to make sure Lawrence got it, and I'll call tomorrow. Because they should have at least gotten back to me within 7 days of if there are wetlands or aren't wetlands on the property.
So my concern as far as, I just want to go over the RSAs and make sure we're all on the same page as far as complaints and things of that nature that come in.
Well, and, we're the first in the book, interestingly, and maybe I could, and this also goes on. So I didn't read all of them, so it might get where there's other things we're supposed to do or not supposed to do. Although I don't think there's anything that,
So we're supposed to stand by and watch the destruction of the wetlands, if there is wetlands? Or
No.
are
Well,
wetlands
we
there?
don't have any authority to stop
Right,
things, I mean, that.
but by informing the people that are there,
I
Yeah,
think you
don't-
can.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I don't think it specifies, I don't remember reading that part of it. As far as just saying, hey, you're doing this, you shouldn't be. But as far as saying you need to stop, you can't do that.
yeah, no, we didn't do that, no. Matter of fact, we didn't say you shouldn't be. We said you might want
Want to stop.
think
so you
about
don't-
looking into it further before you proceed.
And I advise them to immediately call DES, because they will tell them immediately if there's wetlands on the property. I have the mapping, unless I'm missing something on my mapping, I advise them they had no wetlands. But again, once the complaint came in, regardless, I have to file it as potential because someone believed there was. And I wouldn't want to make that mistake if there truly are.
No, we could have called Jeff, and I'm sure he would have been able to tell us.
Right, maybe. Although what's your billable 15 minutes is the problem.
So, anyway, so are we all set with it, or Larry?
Yeah, so just to be clear, if a property owner is informed and grants permission, you could go onto the property with the owner.
From what I understand, yes, as long as the owner is
Absolutely.
contacted and he gives his permission, has no problem, then yes, you can.
And
And you can make suggestions, as Don said, as far as
Just-
you may want to wait and check into this
So you
before
don't-
you do any more, yeah.
Because I think there would be significant fines involved if you did cause,
in a case such as this, or any case then, does the owner of the property, is the owner of the property alerted to the fact that a complaint or it's not a complaint, what
it's,
No, it was a complaint.
is filed to DES?
This is a
Yes.
copy of it, Larry.
I don't do it. Once it's filed, I could do it, but actually, I tried to find, this property is owned under an LLC, and then it's held out of a law firm in Claremont.
But there's no obligation to tell the landowner there is a
They will get,
complaint and it's being looked into.
not by us, DES will notify them immediately.
Okay.
And
So-
DES asks for them to respond. And when wetlands are concerned, they're supposed to be within 7 days. Now, I wrote wetlands, they might immediately find out there aren't any on here, so they could wait 30 days.
Wasn't there, it was, besides the wetlands, there was also a concern about shoreland.
Well, it
Yes.
looks like it could be within the 250 feet of the Sugar River, which is, but we couldn't tell. The vegetation is very dense.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we couldn't exactly even really eyeball it too much.
There is a man-made, was the path, old rail
The rail
path
trail,
that
yes.
interrupts their land and the river, so.
Is in between the two.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So,
But it's good that, again, even if it's found that there was no harm done, at least everyone knows that they can safely move forward. Or if there is something that they should move away from, they can safely move away from that, which I would want to know if I was a landowner, personally.
The friendly neighbor policy.
Well, yeah. And I think the best way is to just file it with DES, not like you're trying to knock someone's legs out from under them, but then they get told and it all gets worked out.
moving on? Okay.
I think we're all set.
Jeff, are you all set?
Sure.
Shall we move forward with Jeff's presentation?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, everybody knows why Jeff is here? We don't need any introductions?
This is about the natural resources.
Yes, yeah.
Just before you start the presentation, though, we had to all
So-
load an open office in order to view it, so just give me a minute and I'll come back before you start. Okay.
So the city of Claremont has a natural resources inventory. You can access it through their website. And I happened to be looking at it and thought it looked very thorough. Not that I'm an expert, but it looked thorough to me, and I just called Jeff to get an idea of whether or not he'd be willing to come and do a presentation for us, and he said yes. I'm sure there's other firms that do this kind of work.
Yeah, there's a few others.
Yeah. But, something, a natural resources inventory, to the best of my knowledge, has never been done for the town of Newport. And RSA 36A actually requires that conservation commissions have an index, more or less an inventory of their natural resources. It's something that they don't enforce, I don't believe. I've never heard of anybody being cited for it. But it's also the basis for good decision-making by the Conservation Commission and the town for when looking at locations in town that might be worthy of some kind of protection or preservation. And you can't do that without somebody doing the legwork. And I don't feel anybody, certainly I don't have the expertise to try to do this on my own. Jeff is an expert in the field, and if you're ready to go, Jeff.
Sure, yeah. I'll just give a quick introduction of who I am and my business. So I'm Jeff Littleton. I'm the owner and principal ecologist of Moosewood Ecological. We've been providing a variety of different ecological services for New Hampshire and the greater New England area for 20 years now. Next month will be our 20th year in business, so we're very excited about that. I've been doing this work for 30 some odd years, so this is nothing new to me. It's what I've just been doing my whole life, pretty much. We work for an awful lot of conservation commissions, so we work on many different levels with many conservation commissions depending upon their budgetary needs, what they're on phase scales, whether it takes a year to do or a couple years to do. I have repeat customers, if you will, coming back to me after 10 years to revise their natural resource inventory, doing it now for the town in which I live in. We're finishing up with a revision there. Also work for a lot of governmental organizations, so U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the state, other federal agencies, lots of land trust. to try to garner grant monies for conservation protection, land acquisition, and a lot of private landowners doing land management, habitat restoration. So it really, the work that we do really fills the full gamut of the natural resources realm. And so I also partner with a variety of other professionals as needed. Now I have a team, in-house team, there's 8 of us this year that work seasonally. I got me and another guy who work full-time, Stephen Lamont, who's our GIS specialist. He's also a project manager and ecologist as well. So we've been building our team, but again, we do partner with other professionals as needed, maybe say a wetland scientist, if a question comes into play, and I'll address this wetlands issue that you guys were just talking about as well. Hopefully it might provide some insight. I also have been teaching at Antioch University since 2007 on wildlife inventory techniques, vegetation inventory techniques, forest ecology, and interpreting past land use history, such as when the colonists came over here and started clearing land back in the 1700s. I can tell you what type of agriculture was happening out on the landscape, so it's really cool. Fun stuff, because that really plays into what do we see today? What happened in the past leads to what we see now, and what's going to happen into the future given climate change and other land management aspects. I guess we're ready here. So, yeah, what I'd like to do is just provide you with an introduction to what a natural resource inventory is, and then feel free to ask questions along the way, or at the end. I think I'm going to take about 30 minutes maybe, but I'm happy to hang out as long as you need to, answer questions along the way here. All right, so these are the variety of topics we'll talk about tonight. What is an NRI? What is your role as a Conservation Commission? Don started getting into that a little bit. You know, why do you conduct them? What are the uses of these, of an NRI, and the various components? So Don was talking about RSA 36A2. So that's the statute that says you as a Conservation Commission, it's your role to prepare an index or a natural resources inventory for your town. State mandates is they're not going to give you any money for it. There is some places out there that you may be able to find some grant monies for this stuff. Not so much these days as it was about 10 to 15 years ago. But anyway, so what is a natural resource inventory? Basically, it is an index of your natural resources, your wetlands, your groundwater supplies, your soils, whether they're really good for agriculture or forestry, or if you're looking at protection of gravel pits or potential gravel pits. We can take a look at a lot of different types of soil characteristics. Looking at wildlife habitats and other ecological resources. So there really is no end to the idea of inventorying your natural resources. It really depends upon you as your community. What are you most interested in learning more about and to educate the community on? And I'll get to the education part, because that's just as important as the work that I do, is making the maps and the narrative and the report, putting it all together to help make sense to you what you have on your landscape. But bringing in the community into the process, I think, is very important. So that's another thing that we do an awful lot at Moosewood, is education on many, many different levels. So there's lots of reasons to conduct a natural resource inventory. I'll probably expound on a few more as we talk here, but it really does provide that foundation for informed decision making, as Don was talking about, now and into the future. If you know what you have, you know what the priorities of protection in your community, then maybe you can start to act on those priorities. It contributes to your vital part of your cultural and economic community structure, educating your community on what you have and where you have it. And then once you have maps centered around a room, people just, it's like a magnet. They go straight to it and they look exactly where they live. It's like, oh, I didn't know I had that habitat on my property, or I didn't know that was on my property because I know I live by that particular pond. And it really provides that first phase for a conservation plan. So the natural evolution of a natural resource inventory would be the identification of your natural resource inventories, ideally identifying conservation focus areas, which I'll conclude on here, and then moving that into a conservation plan itself. So I'll stop right there for a moment because it really depends upon your community, what your needs are, and where you want to go with this. How much do you put into it? So I mentioned Claremont. Claremont did a little bit more than a basic NRI because we did wetlands evaluations for the community as well. So we evaluated all the wetlands, I think at least 2 acres or larger. It might have been 1 acre or large. That was a lot of wetlands. But then we added that to their NRI because that's what they were interested. They wanted to know where the wetlands were. I did some better mapping than what's out there for them through air photography interpretation and on the ground work. And then we evaluated them because they're interested in understanding where their most valuable wetlands are. They may want to move that into a realm later on looking at designation of prime wetlands. We can talk about that later if you care to. So, you can use them in a lot of ways. I mentioned education. You're going to hear me say that word over and over again because it's really important that not only the residents of your community understand what there are, but all the different boards and commissions in your town understand what sort of resources, where you have them. I mentioned the conservation planning. A natural step after an NRI is completed is to adopt that into your master plan itself. That's very important to do. It can be used to develop land use or zoning changes. Some communities have used their NRIs to develop wetlands zoning if they're interested. A lot of different types of zoning around this, depending upon what the interest is. Stewardship planning for your own town-owned lands. You can use this information as a base point to go on. Restoration opportunities. It also can help you prioritize more detailed studies later. I work with a lot of communities where we develop a basic NRI, and then from there, a lot of questions start to arise, or then the community is now interested, well, I'd really like to have more detailed information on our town-owned land, so then maybe we can start to develop more land management planning, working in conjunction maybe with a forester. So there's a lot of different uses behind this. So there's various components of an NRI. Maps are like the biggest thing. That's what gets people really jazzed. Again, people love maps. You start putting maps around a room and they just gravitate towards them. So that's the big piece. But then there's a lot of data in those maps. So I pull out a lot of data there, so tables, so looking at different wildlife habitats. How many acres of hemlock, hardwood, pine forest are in your community, or wetlands and different resources. And then we pile that all together into a report, which talks about the various natural resources. What are they? Why are they important? Where are they? And then we quantify it, looking at how much of how many acres of each of your natural resources, or length of streams in your community. So you can, and you can learn an awful lot more if you go to UNH Cooperative Extension site. They have a natural resource inventory page on there. There we go. And that's the New Hampshire method right there. That's what we used in Claremont. That's what I'm using right now on a couple different projects. So, but they have a lot of great information. Amanda Stone from UNH Cooperative Extension has been revising the state's natural resource inventory, so they're a wealth of information to look on. You can probably get lost on their website for a while, but there's a lot of really great information that will help you better understand what a natural resource inventory is. But this is something I just took right out of their book, but it makes sense. You know, you're establishing your work group, you kind of have it right here, unless you want to bring in other people and develop a subcommittee for your NRI, your choice. Determining your goals, your scope, your study areas, obviously your town, but I do work with Land Trust where we cover a big service area, so lots of different towns. So always reviewing existing information. There's a lot of information that's out there, so we know where to ask, where to dig. We talk to Land Trust to find out what they know about their conservation easements through their monitoring, through their baseline documentation reports. So there's a lot of information that's out there we can start gleaning to start to understand what's in the town before we even hit the pavement running. You got to develop your budget, and again, engage your community. Educate, educate, educate.
Can I ask a question on the
absolutely.
budget? How would we develop a budget? unless you guys know, like, what are their typical ranges of services to get this done? If we were to contract, if the town was to hire an outside contractor like yourself, because I would have no idea, like, what like, so how would we come up with budgeting?
I
You
could
would-
help you figure that out based on what your needs are, based on what your goals and objectives are, what do you want to try to get out of it. I mean, there's no one size fits all.
Right.
I'm going to present on like a basic NRI, which would be maps, report, maybe do some community outreach.
Yep,
And, that could run you anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 to $10,000.
okay,
Once you start getting into some field work, which I always recommend, because some of this data, there's always errors that's associated with it, to start to get some samples throughout your town, on your town-owned properties, or asking landowners for permission to access their property, to take a look at the resources that are there based on what I'm seeing. So I'll take a look at all this data and say, ooh, these are some special areas here. But also that can come out of some of these forums when the public comes out and say, oh, this area over here is really special. And it helps me to understand where the significant resources are. And so those are the areas that I would target. Then you're talking about moving forward into something that could be upwards of $15,000. If you want to throw in like the wetlands evaluations, you're talking about another 10 to 15. So you can just keep layering it on there.
Absolutely.
And so what you want to get out of it, we talk, we have a conversation. And so I'm listening to you and saying, okay, well, this sounds like the approach and this is what I'm thinking. And then it may be over your budget, and then we can back down
Whittle
from
it down.
there. And that's why I've worked a lot with communities, like on a phased level.
Right.
So you have this much, we can do it for this, and then here's what your next steps are. So I always would leave each phase off with a product for you to have that is a workable product, not just something to slap up on the wall like a map itself. There's going to be a working component to it.
well, we are engaging in master plan right now because our last one was done in 2012, and obviously our natural resources in the Conservation Commission were implemented in the natural plan 10 years ago. They need to be redone. We don't have this. And then we're also looking at our whole zoning. The planning board is also redoing zoning. So this could be broached, I would think, outside of even this venue, towards like a BOS thing, because of the other projects we're working on. This could be highly beneficial to doing the master plan. That's you, right? You're doing the master, right? And so I'm
a
just
big
thinking
process.
about it, yeah, I'm just thinking about it, if it contributed to like so many other phases than just you, it would be easier to maybe get a contractor
Is there a basic time frame? Or if we went with a basic,
plan.
Right.
We go with the,
how
with the
long
little,
would something like that take generally?
Anywhere from 6 months to a year. I mean, we can just crank it right out for you if that's what you want, but if you want to engage the public and stagger some of the meetings, we got summertime coming up, people are going on vacation, school's still in now, but once school's out, people are going to be going on vacation, so may have a hard time getting people, but yeah, I can work with your schedule. I've done them as quick as 3 or 4 months, depending upon how fast you need it. And if there's no field work involved, and that's really what I call the armchair exercise, the armchair NRI. And it's very important, though. I'm not knocking it at all, but it's just office work. It's gathering existing data that's free, that's out there, that we use on a daily basis, and we make a series of maps, which I'll go through, like what I would suggest for the bare minimum for the information that you want to include in there. And so that means there's no manipulation of the data, meaning, for instance, so that's a good segue. So water resources is one of the main themes that we look at. So we look at above ground and below ground. So one of the maps that I always produce is a wetlands and surface water map. So what you have here, the green and the purple, the green and the pink, they're hydric soils. They're basically wetland soils. Then in the green we have, that's part of the the hydric soils. We have 100-year floodplains, 500-year floodplains here. This is the town of Chesterfield that we're just redoing their NRI, as I mentioned. And then there's wetlands all throughout the community. Some of these we've mapped ourselves. So on that particular property, while the data that you have may say that there's no wetland there very well could be, because there's a lot of small wetlands that aren't captured in this process. So that's part of that era that's associated with the National Wetlands Inventory. Luckily, the state of New Hampshire has enhanced theirs, and it does really, really good job. It picks up a lot more wetlands than the old version did. But we actually, using air photography interpretation, refined all the wetlands in the town of Chesterfield, so it's more representative of the wetlands in the community.
So a question I have, Christina, partly is our tax map has an overlay of wetlands in the town. Where did that information come from? Does anybody know where that would have come from and how accurate, up to date it is?
Well,
Anybody know?
I get additional information, like I have flood mappings for Newport over the last, that I get from FEMA, that, I have in files. It's actually, it would be great to have all of this scanned online, so people could look at, instead of just the flood mapping you're thinking on Access GIS, right? Is that what you're thinking about?
I don't know what the name of it is. I know if I want to go to the tax map,
That's Access GIS.
and then there's an overlay or
Yes.
a layer that shows wetlands.
Yeah.
We
And
have more documentation than that we're given by New Hampshire.
I see.
And again, you can have beautiful natural wet resources on your property. They're just not necessarily registered and protected. Not that they shouldn't be, but they're not registered and protected, at least right now,
Well, isn't
from what
there
it
an
sounds like
acreage
you say.
limitation, Jeff? Is there an acreage limitation? Anything below a certain acreage? Is it 2 acres or something like that?
Not necessarily so, well, there is. I mean, you can have some, not so much acreage on the wetlands. It has more to do with the forest cover that is open. When you see you see a marsh, you can easily map that marsh from an aerial. Forested wetlands are the ones that kind of get left off a little bit because of the mapping process that went on back in the 70s by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the original National Wetlands Inventory, with that enhanced, and now it's called NWI Plus. They have better mapping. Soils, that's when you get into acreages. They're good to about 2 acres. Below that, it kind of falls out and you need to get on site. But again, the wetlands that are mapped, they miss quite a few wetlands and significantly smaller wetlands and a lot of vernal pools that would be what we call a jurisdictional wetland, meaning that it is regulated in the state because it has 3 parameters. It's got the wetland soils, the wetland plants, and the hydrology that's there. Those are the 3 parameters that say, yep, that's a wetland, and then you hire a wetland scientist and they tie their flags around that wetland.
Oh, what's hydrology?
Hydrology, soils, and plants.
That's what hydrology is?
No.
What's hydrology?
Of the water.
Just the water?
Yeah.
You're talking about the water,
Yeah.
so I got the soils, plants, and
So
the hydrology is
plants, and the
water?
soils, yeah.
And they test the water for a certain amount, like it's what's in the water, living in the water, or just the water itself?
The water itself, if you have water that is, it gets a little deep, but that's just one of the parameters, is there hydrology there long enough to promote hydric soils and wetlands plants?
Okay, so
Yeah.
there might have been natural wetlands, just not registered.
Right. I mean,
Yes.
I'm no I've got
I
a
don't
little
know about
background
that
in biology, and it looked to me
hydrology.
like that could be a wetland there, just by the type of plants that were
We're
there.
growing.
In
But
the
I'm no
summertime,
expert.
you can walk into a forested swamp and you wouldn't even know that it's a wetland. I
Because
mean, you could walk right through a vernal pool in the summertime if it dries up, but if all the 3 characteristics are there, then it's a
It's
jurisdictional
protected.
wetland.
I did,
Yeah.
well, that's excellent.
And so that's again, some of the error that's associated with the data. So we can try to go in and refine that. Now we're going into the data manipulation stage. So we can map wetlands from aerials and using other technology that's out there, such as LiDAR information that does really well at mapping the contour of the land. It's amazing technology that we have these days. So the surface and wetland waters is something I would certainly recommend that you have in your NRI. Then we move into, this is the town of Bow. We just finished this project up not too terribly long ago. This is groundwater resources, so this is below the ground where your aquifers are, this peachy area and the pink and the purple all along the Merrimack River, and then there's some up here in the northwestern section of the town as well. So these show where your stratified drift aquifers, and again, this is all existing information. This is from the U.S. Geological Survey. So these are sands and gravels that's underneath the ground where water can flow through, where I have a bedrock well. Most of us have bedrock wells if you're on a private well, unless you're lucky enough to live over a stratified drift aquifer. Otherwise, you're just drilling until they say, whoa, we got enough pressure now you're good. So that's what these areas are showing, is where your groundwater is through these sand and gravel deposits that were left when the glaciers receded. Now these other areas that are in dark brown and a little bit more tan color, these are areas that the state has mapped as being potential future community water supply sites for your community. So DES teamed up with the Forest Society many, many years ago to do this modeling. So DES has all this information on known and potential contamination sites, toxic sites, and then they overlay that information on top of these stratified drift aquifers. And these different colors of these aquifers, meaning there's more flow through this one than there is through this particular area. So they know essentially where high flow is and where the best sites are based on known and potential contamination. So they call this favorable gravel well analysis. They did this for the whole state, for you as a community, if you're interested in trying to protect future community water supply sites. These are some of the areas that you want to start doing your investigations into. You would want to definitely work with a professional to find out what that yield is and what is the purpose for it. Is it for a school, or is it for the community at large, or what have you? But anyway, now you're empowered to say, well, we know where our aquifers are, and we see where the state says, here's some of the highest, probably the best water in your community, and maybe where you want to do investigations. The second thing that I always work off of are ecological resources. So I'm going to quickly show you two maps here. One of them is the Wildlife Action Plan, which you're probably all familiar with. We refined a lot of data for the town of Bow. So if you were to pop up the existing data, it would look a little bit different than this map for, actually this is Concord. So we refined a lot of this information, but each one of these colors here just represents a different type of habitat, anywhere from different types of forest to different types of wetlands to cliff and talus slope areas here, all the way up to small little pink areas, a rocky ridge area. Each one of these has a different structure to it that would provide or lend itself to a different wildlife and plant community within there. So you're really talking about biodiversity when you're looking at all these, because each one of these habitat types are going to be different. Some of them may supply habitat for bear. I mean, think about the area that a bear is roaming around. You know, it covers quite the ground. It's going through uplands, it's going through wetlands. Yeah, it's hitting those shrub swamps for those blueberries, just like the rest of us are.
Could I ask you a question
Yeah.
about this map?
Mhm.
I'm going with the assumption this is not armchair mapping.
Some of it was, some of it was not. Now, there is just existing data, like you can go to New Hampshire Fish and Game right now and get a map of your community, what they're saying
Looks
are
like
habitats in your community. We massaged the data.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we could potentially try, without getting the Cadillac version of you, possibly something reminiscent of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we're talking about, you're spending a little bit more, and I do that an awful lot with communities, is we start out with the base data, and there's certain data that's a lot easier to manipulate and to refine than other data. Like soils data, we don't even get into that. We just say, this is what the Natural Resource Conservation Service says there. We go with that because it can get pretty expensive to go out and test soils if you need to. But we can certainly identify where grasslands are. Wildlife Action Plan identifies grasslands, all these areas in yellow. We can easily refine those looking at aerial photography interpretation, because it takes us a little bit of time while we're refining wetlands. We're also refining grasslands, and we're adding other areas like shrubland habitat. That's all identified in the Wildlife Action Plan while mapping potential vernal pools as well. And it's not a hugely costly endeavor to do that. And it, you know, if it's in your budget, I always suggest these are the few items that we can do fairly easily, and it provides better representation of that natural resource in your community. And then that's where the field work comes involved too. Then you can use your field work as a proxy to also.
Your aerial mapping, do you use aircraft or do you use satellite?
We use existing aerial photographs, yeah. These were flown over, you know, like some communities, like bigger cities, like Manchester, they fly their town, their city.
Often.
Yeah, every few
Yeah.
years. So I just finished up a project and we had like, it was the latest, greatest aerials that, you know, the state doesn't have for the rest of all the communities. So, because that's pretty expensive to fly over and
Yeah,
aerials.
they're probably right. They want to make sure no one's, I can see why they're doing that. And then your pink, green, and yellow there,
Yeah.
you're just ranking the most productive natural resources?
Well, that's a good question. So I didn't. This is from the state's Wildlife Action Plan. This is what they said is some of the best areas in the state are these purple areas. Those are the highest ranked habitats or areas that have high valued habitats kind of clustered together. Then the green is more from a regional state point of view, and then it's kind of like an orangey kind of color. They call those supporting landscapes. So the idea, if you protect the highest ranked area and you protect the area around there, what you're doing, you're protecting the core habitat, and then you're providing a buffer around there if that's something.
And that's where you would do zoning regulations, potentially from this information.
You could. And so we like to put both of these on there. Again, this is just stock data. We don't mess with the ranking at all. We use that in terms of as one of the little tools in our tool chest to identify conservation focus areas. Because this, you know, it's developed for a statewide and regional level. Once you get down to town level, we can use it to a certain degree, and it is very important, and you should use that information when you're looking at conservation planning into the future. Should a landowner come to you and say, hey, I want to put my land in conservation, I need a little financial support, you know, like for the boundary survey, for the lawyer services and stuff like that. And you can take a look at some of these areas and determine, is it worth the community's time and money to pursue that conservation project. The other piece that's associated with ecological resources is looking at the unfragmented landscape. So these are areas that are unbroken by roads, and we're not talking about woods roads that are out in the middle of the woods. We're talking about anything from a class 1 to a class 5 road. So class 6 roads, they don't include in there, but there's error with that. So we clean that information up as well to provide you with a better sense of where these big unbroken blocks of land are. So for those that are familiar with Pisgah State Forest here, near where I live, so this is an extremely huge block. And why are they important? Because the bigger the block, it equates to higher biodiversity, hopefully lower levels of invasive species, particularly plants that are in there. Once you get into small or unfragmented blocks like these areas, you probably have a lot of invasive plants. You have lower wildlife diversity. Gray squirrels, blue jays are in there. Yeah, will a bear cruise through that block? Sure, if it's going from here to over there, if it wants to, but you're typically not going to see that in a moose and a bobcat, and you're definitely not going to see forest interior birds like ovenbirds and black-throated cranes and blue warblers hanging out in areas like that. So this gives you a sense of where your big unbroken forest with embedded wetlands are, from a really quick point of view. And again, we clean up this data because DOT, there's some errors in their classification of classics roads. So I always work with the road managers and communities, go, what's wrong with this map? Are there any classics roads that look like they're fragmenting?
Does unfragmented land have a large impact on enhancing hunting grounds,
Well,
game
yeah,
species?
you're going to have more productive wildlife in these bigger blocks than you are in these smaller blocks, that's for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of people find hunting to be, important. Conservation isn't necessarily first and foremost, other than from the standpoint of
Yeah.
protecting wildlife. And
But if you're a hunter, then you
It's
want to
important.
see the woods and the wetlands and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not huge developments that are breaking up the areas that you grew up hunting in or fishing in, for that matter. Or
Right.
even snowmobile clubs, they want to continue to ride their snowmobiles. There's a lot of stakeholders that are out there that would rather see these natural resources intact so they can still go hunting and fishing and snowmobiling and cross-country skiing and, the pure enjoyment of New Hampshire outdoors, And then I go into what I call the working landscape. I'm going to talk about agricultural resources and forest resources. These mainly come from the soils. We look at it, but there's a couple other elements that we can add to it. Here again, we're back in Chesterfield. So what we did, we mapped the active grasslands in the community, meaning the active farmlands that we could pick up in Chesterfield. Then we overlay that on top of these various different types of agricultural soils that the Natural Resources Conservation Service says, these are some really good areas for farming. And it doesn't mean that you all who love to grow, have gardens, and you've been adding great amendments to it over time. You may have some of the best soils in the town, but from a big point of view, this is what USDA is saying. These are some really good soils. And so you have areas that are prime farmland soils that are in green. And those just mean those are some of the best soils in your community based on their criteria. And then the other ones are just other farmland soils of great importance. And the white space is areas that USDA said, the soils don't quite match up to our criteria. And that's not a big deal. But if you're interested, if your community is interested in protecting farmlands into the future, you can start to take a look at where the existing farmlands are and what are the soils that are on those particular areas. Those active farmlands that have really good agricultural soils are some of your priorities for protection, or I would think so.
Is this data out there for Newport?
The soils data is, we map the grassland data.
So, really?
Mhm.
And that's at the federal level? The information is drawn?
The soils are, yeah.
Okay.
And that's readily available. It comes in this whole database, and you can break it out into agricultural soils. I'll show forest soils here in a moment. Those hydric soils that I talked about in the beginning. This all comes from the same database. We just go in there and identify this column. That's what we want to pull out of there, and then boom. So we add it to there. So this, and we also actually have plotted these red dots are actually active farms that we know about in Chesterfield, working with the Cheshire County Conservation District. Actually, I mapped those probably 10 years ago doing a volunteer project with them.
So you said this is federal data?
The soils is, yeah, the soils data are
And
federal.
they drill down this much in all the communities?
Mhm.
Oh.
Yeah, this is all statewide. Yep, and that's what's great about this. This is all free data, so you don't have to pay for it. We already have it in our database. We just start to pull out, oh, here's these really good agriculture soils. Boom, that's where they are for you. Now, the farms and these grasslands, we created that database, but it wasn't really that difficult. Again, we're looking at aerials and drawing polygons, and I live in Chesterfield, so I know these farms. I know where they are. I drive by them. I do a lot of birding along this one. This one's really amazing through here. A lot of kestrels, bobolinks. So agricultural resources, a basic level, essentially. Now you can look at it from the forestry side of things. So there's a lot of really good soils for agriculture, but they're also really good for forestry. But when you have a open pasture or crop or hayfield, it's already open, so you don't have a forest. You can let it go back into forest, but maybe that's not the best thing to do. It takes a lot to change a forest into a pasture, and we've lost an awful lot since the late 1700s, early 1800s. So what we're looking at here are two different types of soils, actually three different types. The yellow soils here, the yellow polygons, those are really good for growing white pine. And where do you see these? All along the rivers, because there's a lot of sandy outwash from these areas, and white pine love sort of sandy, dry areas that grow really good trees. The brown and the green are really good for hardwood production. So it just kind of gives you a sense, and the landowners for that, what kind of soils do they have, particularly on their property, and what are those soils maybe best, what type of species are best grown on that. And that's actually, the state actually manages their lands based on soil types. Not necessarily so much they do incorporate what's growing on site, but they also want to know what the soil capabilities are, because they want to grow really good trees. And so if you're not fighting the system, if you're working with the system, then typically you can grow really good trees in a short amount of time without trying to force a particular species on the site that's just not going to do good there.
And this is also already done, the soil, from the vet.
We just have to pull it out of that full
down.
database. Yeah, this is the same thing as that agricultural soils already.
Have you guys ever seen anything like this for Newport? I mean, this would be so beneficial to every landowner.
I've seen something like it,
You
yeah.
have? I don't know anything about the soils, the
A lot of it, I've seen some of this type of stuff on the state
level.
websites.
Yeah, yeah.
And protected species, I mean, they have some protected species information, or?
They do, they don't have point data. They won't show you where the rare species are, but you can look and see what's in Newport in the Natural Heritage booklet. They'll tell you in each community what they know is rare between plants and animals and natural communities, but they won't show you I used to be able to get specific data, and now they've kind of come back and now they kind of buffer it. And for me, working with communities on conservation planning, I like to know exactly where that Blanding's turtle was, or that eagle, or whatever that's rare, because it helps us better understand distribution and looking at conservation planning. But we can still get a sense of what's happening. But you can look on their website and see everything that's in Newport and all your adjacent communities around, and get a sense of what you have in town or what you may have in town. But also those habitat types can also give you an idea of what else you may have that's not on that list, because that list that's maintained by Natural Heritage, that's the information they have. They haven't gone out and done a full sweep of the whole state. It's just the information they've had that's either been reported to them from development projects, or them going out on state lands, doing their inventory, or someone like myself that's hired by a community like yours, going out on your town lands, inventorying stuff, and with your permission, then I can release that data to them, and then it's known what's in your community. Then, you really want to get a good handle on where your conservation lands are. There's a big hole in this database. So we can pull up what's existing on a state level, what the data warehouse that we go to here in the state over at UNH, and we can pull in what they say is conserved, but maybe not everything that has been protected in your community was reported into that database.
So conserved lands, like lands that have easements or some kind of conservation?
Yeah, that just didn't happen to get into their database because it was never reported.
Forest Society or something.
And there's always more lands in each community, and I always try to work with communities to try to make this as accurate as possible, without having to go through the deeds and everything, because that could be quite exhausting and take quite a bit of time. But again, this was the Bow project, And this one, you can see all these numbers that are on here, so that corresponds to a table, so it shows the name of the property with the acreage of each one. And you can see Bow has quite a bit of conservation lands and a lot of town forests as well. The ones that are all labeled are all town forests, pretty much.
What's the green?
So there's different types of protection. So the green is conservation easements. Yeah.
And the yellow is town-owned.
Yeah, those are all town-owned. They call it fee ownership. It's owned by the town. So there's some level of protection that's on there. And then there's another one.
Purple one?
I need my glasses. Open space residential. Yeah, this purple stuff. So those are like cluster subdivisions, if you happen to have an ordinance around cluster subdivisions. So, you know, they put the houses really close together and they protect the surrounding lands, and that's what's showing there. So it just shows the different types of protection types that are out there. And it's just interesting to know which ones are easements. And, you know, it's always good to, when we're creating these maps, you know, we certainly want to let people know that that doesn't mean all these lands are open for anyone to walk out there. They may be, but just because it's protected doesn't mean it's open to the public. There are some protected lands that are not open to the public, and those would be posted as such. But so now you have a good sense of where the conservation lands are in your community. And all those other maps that I showed prior to that have all these conservation lands on there. So each one of those other maps, the wetlands, the groundwater resources, the wildlife habitats, all that stuff has these conservation lands on there. So then you can look at what resources are protected and maybe what's lacking. What sort of resources may deserve more protection in your community because they're not being represented in a protected state. And that can also help you think about zoning into the future. You guys are going to be busy tonight. So quickly, I'm going to wrap up here in a moment, but there's a couple different ways of identifying conservation focus areas. One way is to do a parcel-based assessment, and that's what this is. You don't necessarily see where the parcels are, but you can see that these are basically parcels. There's no parcel lines on here. But this is a computer model that we create that looks at a variety of all these different resources that we talked about prior. It puts it into a model and it ranks all the parcels based on this model. Say property size, less than 10 acres, 10 to 50 acres, 50 to 100, 100 to 250. Each one of those get a point value. The larger the parcel, the higher the point value. So then there's all these different attributes that we rank. And so the areas here in the dark blue are the highest, have the highest conservation value or natural resource value for water resources. So those three themes that I talked about before. So we do that for water resources, ecological resources, and then that agricultural and forest resources are the working landscape. Now, a lot of communities just kind of hold this in a folder because this helps you again with when an interested landowner comes to you and wants to talk about doing some conservation on their property. You know where their property is, and then you can identify, oh, it's high ranking for this particular resources or this theme of resources, and then that may provide you with the insight to, well, let's do a site visit. This looks like a really interesting piece of property, and where does it fit in the conservation landscape too? Is it going to abut to conservation land? So that's going to have high value. And then we can take a look at it. And what I did with those three maps prior, I distilled it down into conservation focus areas. Now this isn't totally parcel based. I started out with those parcel assessments, overlaid those three different types, and then I looked at the adjoining natural resources that were there. So I just know from doing this mapping that it was this area was really important, but then you see all these different arrangements. These are all wetlands, and I know what rare species were in that area, so it doesn't make sense to just cut off this area on that other modeling that we did. We want to be inclusive of all the other resources. So Now this provides you with a sense of where your conservation focus areas are in your community, sort of the end product of an NRI. Some people just stop with just the mapping and they don't identify conservation focus areas. Maybe that's a project later on. I always recommend if you can, you might as well, because it doesn't take that much more time to move into that realm. And it provides you with sort of marching orders. And especially when you put this into your master plan, it provides you with teeth of why you are willing to spend the town's resources for protection of that property. It provides you with justification that you need. Any questions at this point? I won't get into an awful lot, but I'll talk about community outreach for a second. So a lot of things that we do are forums. 1 or 2 forums per community, getting the residents together, looking at things, what are challenges of natural resource protection in your community, where are the special places in your community. We can ask a lot of different questions. Basically, introducing the idea of the natural resource inventory, so something that we do typically in the beginning of the process to inform the public of what's going on, why are we doing it, and then to engage them into the process by trying to understand where are they coming from. So you can do forums, you can do surveys, like a lot of master plans do surveys for a variety of different topics, not just natural resources, right? Those are always good ways. Let's see, whole list here. Educational workshops and hikes, communication with town boards, that's very important, obviously, that you're all communicating together. One of the things that we're really pushing these days are our bio blitzes and using iNaturalist on your phone to do this, and it's a really fun way of getting people of all ages together to get outside and start to understand what's happening on their property or public access properties, not any private properties unless that landowner gives you permission. But essentially what it is a bio blitz is like you identify a particular area that you're going to focus on, say town-owned lands and your property, and you're going to start at this particular time, end at this particular time, and you just log down everything that you see and hear. And you can use the iNaturalist app on your smartphone to take a picture of something, and then it submits it into a database. And there's professionals, like we verify some of these sightings too, but there's professionals all over the world, not just the United States, that look at this stuff and say, yes, that's exactly what that is. So now you got verification of that. And we create a whole program. This is a website for the town of Chesterfield Living Field Guide. There's a lot of cool things. You can see where all the sightings were because it downloads it right to a central database. And it's just really fun for kids to get out, adults to get out and just start to explore the natural world of Newport. And we're doing another round this year in Chesterfield. The Conservation Commission decided they want to do it annually because there was such a good turnout last year, and it's super easy to use these things on your phone. All these apps are pretty fail-proof in a way these days, right? I mean, if I can use it, anybody can use it. So that's another fun way of community outreach to get people involved, because now they know they're not only are they sitting in a room saying, yes, that area over there is special, this area, they're actually going out and collecting information. They share it, and then they can log on to the site and see what's been going on. And I think, I forgot how, we're well over 1,000 different species for Chesterfield at this point. So,
You've gotten people using the iNaturalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Excellent, yeah.
And we can do like an hour training, whether it's on Zoom or in person, and then that way then we can identify a day to go out and do this, and people go out and they just report their sightings, and then we can include this in the final report of saying, hey, look, this is the biodiversity that we know of at this moment here in Newport. So it's
Something you might be able to do with the rec
it's a fun
department.
thing to do.
Yeah.
So I hope I didn't bore you too much. So the whole essence is like, it's your NRI is what you make it. It's what you want to get out of it. What are your interests? What are your goals? what are your priorities in your community? And I can help you identify that. Again, identify a budget based on what your interests are, or if you have a particular budget and tell me your interests, I can outline, okay, this is what we can do. I can provide you like with a scope of work, proposal, what have you, and it'd be like a back and forth until we can decide exactly what fits yours. And that's why I say there's no one size fits all for these NRIs. What I showed was kind of like a basic level, but then there's so many different details you can lay on top of that. And so I work with communities to help them identify what they probably want to have based on the discussions.
So you said Claremont's was kind of a mid-level?
Yeah, that was 12 years ago. I just realized, because I'm doing some work up there now, and I was thinking, wow, it's been a long time since I've been there. I think that was, at that point, was around $25,000.
Oh.
The one I'm doing for Chesterfield is about 22. The one I did for Bow was 32. But there was a lot of data that we developed, a lot of data that we massaged. We did field work. For Chesterfield, I think we got out 15, 20 days out in the field. Some of that was in the winter time, trying to understand where mammal movements were happening, in the community. With Claremont, the big price on that was the wetlands evaluation, because we evaluated so many of them, and it does take quite a bit of time.
Field evaluation?
Yeah. We did some field evaluation. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can answer by computer now, which is wonderful, but it still doesn't substitute getting out in the field, because there's questions about invasive species. Well, you can only surmise that this wetland out in the middle of this big forest and this huge unfragmented block may not have many, if at all, invasive, but then that nice wetland right next to the road in a big community probably has a lot of invasives, because a lot of the birds are hanging out along the edges. So field work is definitely part of it too. Yeah, but we can also extrapolate from there.
That's not necessarily what drove their cost, though. I guess that's what I was trying to connect.
No, we also did just regular site visits anyway. The same thing that I did with Chesterfield for their first one. They were interested in doing a wetlands evaluation. While we were out there, we were field checking the different wildlife habitats to see what was out there, logging down any species that we saw are here, looking for rare species while we're out on the different properties. And all this is very clearly outlined to landowners. If that's something you're interested in doing, sending out a letter, and and they can provide permission or not. It's their choice. And that I've worked on anything from $6,000 to $72,000 for NRI. So it really runs the gamut, and depends on what you want to try to achieve from it.
Have you done like Hanover?
I didn't do Hanover.
You have,
no.
yeah.
I helped out on Lebanon's.
Oh, Lebanon's, yeah.
Yeah, that was a top notch
One.
Yeah.
Really? I'm gonna go look up their
Yeah.
NRI, go see what they've got going on.
Yeah. But Hanover has a really nice one.
I bet they do,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, they've got a great conservation commission, and I think they have a pretty good budget,
Yeah, probably so.
which is important. It
Yeah,
should.
some communities aren't so fortunate, and
Yeah.
I do work with communities with very limited budgets, and I help them as much as we can. And again, we get to a certain point, and then when they're able to gather more funding, we pick right up off of there, and we keep building on it. So it's not a static document. I typically recommend communities updated around every 10 years. And now these days, there's so much more new data that's coming out. And better data, that's coming out. I mean, the Wildlife Action Plan is on their third round of habitats that they've been mapping and refining, and based on professionals like myself, having conversations with them, showing where some errors that we're seeing out in the field helps them refine their mapping. In fact, let's see, in 3 more years, they're going to come out with a new version. So every 5 years, they update their habitat data.
And you said there might be grants available for these kinds of things, or?
Yeah, there used to be, it was L-chip. I had gotten, this was a long time ago, I had gotten some funding through them, and then they stopped funding for things like NRIs. I don't know if they're doing that anymore now, but I heard that Moose Plate may.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They do, that's directly for concert, to go towards conservation. There's also a lot of private grants around here that you could ask for, like there's something called the Newport Fund alone, like that's the title of it. And we asked for we supported a large part of the playground that was done, the top lot playground. That structure alone cost 60 grand. I wrote that grant, but they will accept anything. They do a number of things. I would think that this would be a great candidate for potential for the Newport Grant Fund.
Upper Valley Regional has been pushing communities to do an NRI, at least a basic.
Well, and I think it would fit perfectly
Valley
in.
Lake Sunapee?
Yeah,
Asking
they would
for
probably
money.
have connections as far as funding and grants.
They might even help us with funding. I've known where they've given us, typically it's around 5 grand for different, it can be soil testing for Brownsfield and stuff like that. So I could, we could probably work on getting some funding too, or trying, or BOS. It sounds
Maybe
pretty
all of the
integral.
above.
It sounds pretty integral to a lot of what we're doing.
I think it's
This is
very
like
important.
really
It
impressive.
all comes back to this side of the table.
I know, back to look at her, because this is so impressive. I could talk to anything about anyone that comes up to my office about any of their land and give better direction on what they're buying and what they're asking to do. I'm gonna try to find this information as best I can to even just assist people, because there's so much land for sale, being sold right now.
Any questions for Jeff?
I just think it was a great presentation.
It was excellent.
Thank
It
you,
was
Jeff.
really interesting.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming in.
yeah.
Absolutely, thanks for having me. You may have some follow-up questions, and so you can funnel them. Maybe I'm pointing you as a point person, Don, since we've had contact, so.
Yep.
But anybody have any questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to.
Do you have cards by any chance?
Oh, goodness.
Do you allow people to audit your classes?
You can.
I could, that would be terrible. That's like, do you allow that or no?
It's not up to me.
Oh, it'd be UNH.
Antioch.
Antioch, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Antioch.
I don't have cards on me. Wow, that's.
We can find you online.
Yeah, you can find me though. If you just look up, I'm Jeff at moosewoodecological.com.
Yeah, I have a contact
My
info.
cell is 831-1980. I accept phone calls as well. I like talking on the phone. I answer a lot of emails, but I'm happy to answer emails at the same time.
Well, thank you very much, Jeff.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you for
It's
having me, and
fantastic.
look forward to continuing our conversation and helping folks out in any way that I can.
Absolutely.
So, should we be moving on, I guess? Because we had a little more to discuss, unless we want to bump it to next month's meeting, but,
I think we could skip the DES violations. I don't have any information on there that I might thought I would have. So I don't think I have much input, although what I'm gonna do is look for input, and I can feed that information to you prior to the next meeting.
okay.
If there is updates.
Okay.
That's updates on this.
Or other ones, not just this one.
Well, let me check on their other ones, but I don't think we have many outliers. I think they've mostly been handled. The other ones on the rail trail were found to be no violation. Remember, you went and looked? So I believe this is the only outlier right now. Am I right on that? Herb keeps me in line typically.
That's all I know of.
Okay, I do too, and I could go check if there's any more. You guys can also check the mail, if Ken isn't gonna be around.
Okay. Did we want to discuss rules and procedures? Skip down to that one.
I think that'd be good
Okay.
to go into that.
I'm not 100% sure why this is on the agenda.
Well, I brought it up because you addressed thinking during voting that we were voting wrong. Now,
Yes.
so I wanted to make sure you felt comfortable however you decided to vote, and that if you wanted to either clarify or leave it as is, that would need to be voted on, and I would then reword anything. Now, with this, I would possibly suggest, only because, I don't know, some of those maps, I'm tired maybe, but I would say everyone should literally see what they want to update. But I know, Don, you had concerns about our voting.
Yeah, I reread
And, right,
well, is this the same as this, Christina?
yes.
You were
this
giving
is-
me this when I first joined.
Yes,
Rules and
yes, they're the same. But
This is just-
again, this can be updated at any time, and again, if you even find some of the wording confusion, we can update it. This is done, but I would think everyone should look if you want to change something. Unless you have
Absolutely.
something specific right now to address.
The only thing I wanted to mention, I got confused about what a quorum, what constitutes a quorum according to these, and it says a majority of the total active voting members.
And not the vacant. We don't have to count
Right.
vacancies,
Right.
because that would really cause problems, but, so that's
Okay.
good to know. And if it wasn't in there like that,
Mm-hmm.
we would have wanted to adjust it, so you could
Right.
function.
I interpreted that at the current level of membership, we need 4 at any meeting to quorum.
Yeah, it's greater than 50%.
Currently, yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can't have
Are
a
we
partial
at 4?
person,
How
so.
many,
Yeah.
are we at 4? Because I'll have to keep,
We're currently at 6 members. Oh, you mean right now?
right, no, right, we are. And you're right, if we didn't have this, we wouldn't be able to meet.
Right.
Or we would have had to call it not a meeting and listen to that, because that would have been horrible. You're right, no, I want to make sure we always have full, I can do, that's a higher level than we've had to meet before. Typically, we've only needed 3, so because our membership, we have Linda, right, and Ken, so this is, okay, so I need to keep that in mind. Because if I'm ever worried about a quorum, I'll make sure I call people so no one wastes their time. I hate people
When
coming.
there were 5 members, 3 would be a quorum.
Right, right. So again, I don't want someone to show up, or 3 to show up, and then we cancel. We're all sitting
For 6.
sitting here.
Needs to be 4.
So I'll try to
This is majority.
communicate before the meetings, maybe a little more. We've been so good, but maybe the moving parts throughout the summer, to make sure we have quorums. I can work on that too.
Right. So with that said, we had talked about reviewing this and making modifications as the committee or commission.
I don't think it's a bad thing to review
Yeah.
every few years. As long as I've been here, which is over 2 years, I don't believe it's been looked at all.
I would suggest that we take this home, review it at our leisure, and bring it to the next meeting with any updates that we wish to, or any questions that we wish.
At the May
Any
meeting?
questions? Yeah.
At the May meeting.
Okay.
And typically too, what I don't see here, which I can see, is that the time that you approve it, even if, say, we didn't change a thing, or you changed a few words here and there, typically you sign at the bottom and date it, and it has the members that approved it and the date, which I don't see who did this and when. I could try to look into that. But I know the planning board's rules of procedures have it shows it, shows your signatures and shows it dated. I would suggest maybe we even do that. Even if you don't change anything, you all vote on leaving it the same, we sign it and date it. So we have a record of when it was last looked at.
Just to clarify, these are our rules within the RSA rules.
Yes, they're your rules. We are not, and we can't violate any RSAs, but you're allowed to, within reason, if you really want to change something like voting, we have to hold to some RSA standards. Like you couldn't just say 2 people could be here. I don't think that would pass muster. I would have to check some of the RSAs. But no, a lot of these you probably could edit or adjust that would not violate anything of an RSA.
So let's just say we wanted, for instance, to amend the rules to say 50% or more is a quorum. Article 9 amendments requires members, you can amend these rules with majority, but members provide that the amendment is discussed at a public meeting. So what constitutes discussed at a public meeting?
Exactly what we're doing here.
Okay, so it doesn't
And-
require a special meeting to invite the public, it doesn't,
No, but what it should do is when I post publicly that we're having this meeting, I post that we're going to discuss the rules of procedure.
okay.
And and again, maybe what I'll do, I could even do it for a while, even if we continue to divert it, like we haven't finished, we're not looking to do votes, as long as I posted it, if you do want to change something, whether even you vote on it or we hold it off to at least you're covered for a basis. And we can always remove anything from an agenda item the day of or at the beginning of a meeting. But we want to make sure we notify everyone. It's better to over-notify than under-notify. I can't do that.
But we are bound by nothing more than to discuss it at our Wednesday night meeting.
And in theory, you're not really supposed to discuss outside with other members. I think you could have you could run
Right.
ideas off your, significant, but you're not really
Right,
supposed to.
but
outside of the
discussing it at this meeting
Is
constitutes
the
what
public.
is required by article.
We could do it at a special meeting if we wanted to just
We could-
just tackle this at a special meeting.
And that
Yeah.
might not, we could have extra meetings, especially, we have so many things, especially but I think this should be moved. I thought invasive species was.
It's been such a difficult procedure to get enough people here at the regular meetings.
I
don't
know.
Special meetings may even be more special.
I know, or just continue and let's just try to continue. We have new members and you're really engaged.
Well, let's put this on the agenda for next,
I'm gonna post
Next
it, even if
The
we
May
don't
meeting.
cover it, there's no
Okay.
harm,
right.
I think that's a great idea. So I'm gonna just say Christina will repost the rules of procedure, and it might get even a little more specific. I'll go into a little more detail that you might make adjustments and vote on those adjustments.
Well, initially, we need just to discuss them.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
there might never be vote. You could discuss them for months on end before you vote on anything.
I should just point out that the public meeting has to be posted, was it 2 weeks?
This is an unusual, you guys are held oddly enough to a relatively low standard. You're only 48 hours and you're only 2 locations, not 3. Now with you guys, I still post you on 3 locations. I do post in 3 locations anyways, but I only have to post on the conservation page and in this public office. I then put it on the Newport calendar on the main page too.
And
Also.
48 hours. Right?
I post usually way in advance. Cause I need to get, I can't miss a posting.
Better safe than sorry.
So they're usually on, I think I post at the beginning of months for all my meetings, so I don't mess up posting. But I could update them too, if someone wanted to add something, I can update an agenda. Up to 48 hours.
Well, moving on, a couple more things. One, let's touch on the last agenda item, is the easement monitoring. Just for Larry's sake, and I'm not sure for Gunter, we are required by the state, the Land Conservation Stewardship Program, to monitor the 4 easements that we have. I think I've given you guys information on those 4 easements. And then file an annual report with the LCSP. And I believe 1 or 2 of the properties, Christina, you're gonna have to help me out, have requirements for us to report to Herb. You passed that information on to us by an email. Is it the Forest Society?
That's who contacted, that's who sent the email to us.
I think they have an interest in those properties. I'm not sure
Yes.
which ones those
I
are.
got that too, right? I got that email, right?
Yeah, I asked you about it, and you said we had submitted the 20 last year, but we hadn't done this year.
Yeah, I get a lot of this, like I get census information to put in for you, a lot of these things I might just do, but the monitoring has to be scheduled and done right by you. I
Right.
could, and I'll recheck on the forestry one to make sure I did give them last year.
They're just looking for the reports
Yes,
at this point, if I understood that correctly from the email that you
That's what I
forwarded.
understood.
and
Yeah.
I have them from
Okay.
last year, and then last year's we didn't do to the fall. This year's, you were thinking of possibly doing them earlier than later?
Well, we need to discuss that next. I just kind of veered off because I remembered that you had sent out that email from the Forest Society.
Research that and find out, because it seems to me it wasn't all of them. They
It
were
was-
just
I think it's
missing a
Yeomans
couple,
and
I
Wells, I'm pretty sure those are the two. Yeah.
I also think, because this has been held off for about 3 or 4 years, we have the beautiful tags to post, and I think this year we should implement the tags while
Boundary
walking.
markers,
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about,
but you
yeah.
can put them up, they don't just have to be like in 4 corners. I have like
Mm-hmm.
100 of them. You could, so people, whenever they're crossing over into something, they might know what they're crossing into. It's conservation land.
Right. So normally, again, getting back to the monitoring, normally the commissioners do that monitoring. But the Land Conservation Stewardship Program, the staff there has, I believe they come out every so many years to do it as a backup. They are willing to come out, but we got down to the wire. We wanted to do it before black fly season, and it's best to do it when the leaves are off the trees, because you can see so much better. So we have that. They are willing to come out on May 4th and 5th. One day, 2 dates for a backup, in case there's a rain date. So part of the problem is Kenny and Linda are not going to be available, as far as I know. Linda said she might be, but wasn't definitive. The 4 of us, as far as I know, none of us actually know the boundaries. Have you ever walked the boundaries, sir?
Well, none of the easement properties, no.
I
Yeah.
could, I don't know if I could be available 2 days, but I think I could easily be available for a whole day.
They're planning on coming out one day,
Only one day, it's the 4th or
but
the 5th.
one would be a rain date.
Oh, okay, so I could make it, I'll have to check my calendar, but I probably could make easily one of the days. I'll just basically be out of the office.
Okay, so the difficulty I'm finding is none of us know the boundaries. I don't know if Linda's willing to come out. She was kind of vague about being able to make it. And the only other person, and the Land Conservation Stewardship Program staff, they don't know the boundaries. They have GIS that they can use, where the GIS is within plus or minus so many feet, so the actual boundary they can't mark. The only person that seems to know the actual boundaries is Cliff Richard.
Well, there are markings. Now we'd have to find them. I also could print the maps of these, and when you pull it up at a large scale, it gives the exact footage of the outline of the property. Now, what I could hope is if we could find one of the because there are Linda always looked for the markings.
Well, I know where some of the markings are,
Right,
but
once you find one, you can pretty much then, because you can then just do footage. I know these are big properties.
yeah,
but
the
if you
Johnson
find-
tract and the Barton tract are pretty good sized properties.
Right, but once you find one and you've got some, a compass, you pretty much, you just pinpoint your location and then you know how many feet to get to do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've never done it, so I can't say
I haven't necessarily
how easy it
either,
is to
but
do. And then, so with all this said, getting Cliff, I don't think I can get out with Cliff before the 4th and 5th. At our last meeting, we discussed about, or maybe it was the March meeting, we talked about, actually it was the March meeting, we talked about getting out with Cliff before these people come. So there's not a lot of, we're not gonna do all 4 properties in one day if we're trying to find the boundaries, I don't think. So I'm inclined to push this off until the fall. That's where I'm going, but if the other commissioners want to take this on,
My schedule, well, next week I won't be available, so we're gonna be coming up against the 4th anyway, before I'm available.
this is all happening very quickly, that's what's happened, so.
And being as we don't have an experienced land person other than Cliff, and I don't really want to rely on Cliff.
Well,
Cliff
Kenny,
also
Kenny,
He's
did-
not reliable.
Cliff can't walk
Yeah.
either. You would have to
Yeah.
have a vehicle for him.
I asked Kenny,
He cannot walk.
I just texted him and I said, whatever happened to the going out with Cliff during April? And he gave me his phone number. So that's where we're at now.
Okay.
So, I just don't see it happening before the 4th.
Is there any downside to waiting?
I think we're gonna have to push it off till,
Yeah, I don't see a downside to waiting. It would have to be in like October.
Or
and now is this gonna make our monitoring reports late?
No, because actually, we did them in October, we did them in the fall last, so almost doing them now, we're almost doing them within
We
6
do
months.
well ahead.
And I think we should all try to walk them. If anyone's
I
willing to
agree.
walk any of them with a compass, and you will, the markers are there, and I could even give you some of the posting. I don't want to post wrong, but if you really are pretty sure, I think we could start nibbling before they come and we get it all accurate.
I think the monitoring itself isn't too hard, because if you think you're on the boundary, if there's nothing going on within plus or minus 30 feet, you don't have to worry about it.
No, you're saying.
But if you're gonna actually put up a boundary marker, you
Yes,
better be on the money, I think, so,
You gotta,
we have to find the markers, and then you really need a compass.
right.
And then you're pretty good. Yeah, but I do think we should do some test pile before they come in October.
Well, this gives us time to
Yeah.
get our act together, if we put it off until October.
There is a ATV vehicle I know owned by the town. I've been on it. I actually used it to go look at some violations for this commission. It's fantastic. And it's like 4 wheels. It's pretty big. I don't know if that would be needed or would help some of the larger plots
Depends on if you can access it with
Yeah.
with an
Right.
ATV, yeah.
And I think, like, what I know of the Wells property, I don't think an ATV is gonna get
It's
down there.
possible.
Yeah,
I know Cliff always said he was gonna go on an ATV and because he couldn't walk it, so
Yeah.
it's just a possibility. I don't even know if I'm assuming we could get permission to use it, but anyways, it's a possibility. And then you could clear land a lot quicker. You could get through these a lot quicker.
so we can try to get Cliff to get out with us sometime. I don't know if he's gonna wanna go out during black fly season.
Wait till after Father's Day.
Yeah,
It's not just mosquito season.
right.
we might be able to stumble our way through if we get a little bit more time to do it.
The other question I have is the monitoring form that we have from the LCSP says that you should contact the landowners.
Yes,
Do
absolutely.
we have their contact
Yes,
information?
yes.
We do.
Yes, and then with them, yes. I mean, some are town owned, I believe.
Well, Barton is,
Yes, so those, it's just the people, the ones that
Yeah,
aren't, which
but-
I think is just like, yeah,
Johnson, Wells, and Yeomans, those are all.
yes.
We need to
And
contact the
absolutely, we let them know and they
Okay.
know, and yeah, and we should even tell them, once we know they're coming and if something changed, call them and say it's changed and when, you know.
Okay,
But that's typically, I think, very easy.
okay. All right.
Well, Christina, if you could print out the maps. like an
Yes.
overview or Something like that.
Let me
I
start
wouldn't mind
working,
looking at that
I
at
know.
some point.
Well, if we
Yeah,
had
I'm
one
willing
of
to
the,
go out and just
kind of
putter around and see what we can
because
find.
you
Get out
could,
sometime and just.
especially the town ones, because there are the
That's
markers.
That's what I'm
And
thinking.
tromp around, and again, I could even give you some of these tags, even if you posted it just right next to where we already have the markers, because they're bright white and green and they glow.
Is this what you're talking about?
I mean, I know the Barton,
Yes, I believe
Two sides.
so, I don't know about
I
this
don't know the
one.
third and fourth side though. Johnson's I'm not
Yeah,
familiar with.
no, maybe, Summer, these are
Yeoman's I'm
more.
familiar with.
Yeah, no, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
And this they might want to
But
know
it's just
too,
some kind of
because
landmark
the
we
new-
can find.
Yeah,
Do
I mean, if
we
you
wanna
guys
say
want to
this?
go
We're
out
gonna
one
do
day,
Oh,
this
I
in
think,
office.
yeah.
we'll just go for a hike.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Right.
don't make everyone, but I wouldn't mind.
Doesn't have this,
Mike
This
Jerry's.
is excellent.
It
Who
abuts,
did he give these out?
the Black's property.
the last meeting.
Barnes and Johnson's are both down by the town forest.
They're on the east side of Summer Street. Going up by the,
And Wells property
is right across from Yeoman's.
okay.
I can,
And then there's this.
Yeah, right across,
yes, this
Blueberry
was,
Ridge Road.
Yeah.
I was
Right
given,
across the street, yeah.
this was for you, was here, just, it's an easy, oh, you don't have one either?
I do not.
Okay, that's kind of a Conservation Commission for Dummies. I know that sounds silly, but it's really helpful. It was a presentation, and I could make more.
you
And it's
got
it?
excellent
Oh.
to go
Well, thank you
to,
very-
so it doesn't sound so
I mean, it's sort of like-
legalese.
Yeah.
And that was given to us by the Upper Valley
Sort of
Lakes
like
Regional.
Finding
And
that, and reading through it. You get
Yes.
good-
Thanks,
It's
Christine.
good to learn.
absolutely, and I thought I had something else for you too, because I had it at the end of this table, but but that's all right, I'll figure out, and I can send the map.
Conservation easements?
That was for him, for also, that's just, this is also a conservation easement, it's not for dummies. It's actually really informative of how they work. That was it, sorry, I put it to the corner because I didn't know where
She
it would
insulted
sit.
you, Larry.
I didn't know where Larry would sit.
Dummies.
And the only other thing, are you gonna, sorry, Chairman, are you gonna move on to administration, or are we still?
Sure, I think we should move on.
I know, it's getting late,
Do
so
we-
just,
Do we need a motion to move that? Maura, would you like a motion to move that rules and procedures to the next meeting?
That would be a good thing.
Okay, I'll move that we move the rules and procedures overview to the May 18th meeting. Is it the 18th? I forgot
Yes,
already.
it is.
18th.
Second? Do we have a second?
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
this is a side note, I made tax vouchers for everyone if they were gonna do a donation. I was thinking you could handle it since you bought the bags. There's my money, and for everyone, I made a separate.
Christina, you don't need to give me $50. I'm gonna end up making money on this deal.
We're just taking, it's a donation, if you don't need to spend it, we can put it towards getting NI whatever.
I tried to convince him to do that, and he wanted to give us change.
But so I made tax vouchers for everyone who's donating, if they do.
Okay,
And so to give it out to them, but I haven't collected any of the money, so I don't know if you have, but that's my contribution. It can go towards hot dogs or something else.
you
I
gave
just
me,
think people go on a hike, they will take the beer along with it.
thank you, Christina,
Do
for
you
doing
see I made
that.
it for everyone, and
Yes, I
it's
see
the
that.
tax ID, and
Very
again,
nice. Could you pass that on? No, that one was for you, Larry, I think that
That's yours.
has your name on
if you
it.
were going to, I didn't know if, I thought everyone was gonna donate possibly, but I don't know, it was, if you're not gonna, I just put it for, so anyways.
So what are we gonna do with this $50? We got it, Christina has donated $50 towards the cause.
But it was for the garbage bags. Didn't you
Well,
buy-
if 7 people, it was only $90. So if 7 people put in, it doesn't come out to $50 or $20 per
You know-
person.
you know what I'll-
You are the appointed chair tonight, so you have to make that
I
decision.
would.
So how do I get this into the conservation
Well,
fund?
okay, so what I would do is I would suggest you collect whatever funds you
Okay.
wanna collect, and then whatever's left over, I don't mind my money, like if you don't use any of it,
Mm-hmm.
I'll deposit it right into the CC, bank account.
That's what we should do then.
Absolutely,
That
but
works, yeah.
keep it for now,
Okay,
if you, cause you at least need $90.
I'm getting it.
Okay, and then, if not, I will have that money, I can do a deposit right into your own account as a donation,
Okay,
which would, why not, right?
right. So with that said, if we can move on to a new item, talking about the May 1st townwide cleanup. Gunter has volunteered to go on the air tomorrow with PJ Lovely to promote the event.
Nice.
Thank you, Gunter. What time is that, 9:30?
9:30, I think.
On 10:10,
10 a.m., yeah.
10:10 a.m.?
Everybody knows what AM is, right?
Amplitude modulation.
Modulation, yes.
I didn't know that.
And FM is frequency modulation.
Oh, it's on AM radio.
Yes.
Oh, I know that. I thought you meant AM in the morning. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what that
9:30
means.
a.m. on the a.m.
Okay, yes, I know what it, yeah. Sorry,
Okay,
I'm tired. It's, yeah, I'll get it.
yeah.
The other one is anti-meridian.
Yes, that, there we go. Thank you.
Okay.
So, that is for the May 1st cleanup. I believe that starts on the Common
Yes.
at 9 o'clock on May 1st. And we are donating, as a commission, the plastic bags necessary to collect and separate aluminum cans.
I think that would be the best.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's fairly straightforward to do.
Mm-hmm.
Separate
Clean and
the aluminum
simple.
from the other containers, and that's a very readily recyclable product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whoever handles, that container, I guess.
Right, well, to the best of my knowledge, those plastic bags are gonna be left up to us to deal with. Not just the empty ones, but the full ones. So you and I had discussed how you were going to dispose of them or recycle them?
Yeah, I would be willing to recycle that,
Okay,
because we have a recycler in Claremont who takes the crushed cans, and we're reimbursed by the pound. And I think that's worth doing, and
I
just,
also have a truck, like if you needed, I have a truck that you could use. I don't know, you must have a truck, right? Large, because I think it's gonna be pretty extensive.
it could
but-
be, yeah, I was expecting I might have to make multiple trips. Gunter's not gonna be in town,
no, I am gonna be out west
Oh,
for that weekend.
so bringing them up to his house and
Yeah, I'll leave.
fill your driveway up with.
Oh,
No.
Leave the garage door
Do
open.
that too. Actually, if we've got a spot, I have my 2 lawn tractors out in the garage to prep them for
Okay,
mowing season, and you could just put them in there, it's a
I
big-
can probably help on May 1st then. I can bring my, so you don't, that's ridiculous to make multiple trips to Claremont or wherever.
yeah, well, anybody that wants to come to the cleanup and anybody that wants to help afterwards, there's as far as I know, there's a barbecue at 12 o'clock, right? And then,
I think PJ will probably fill us in on that.
I mean, I'm playing it by ear. I plan on being down there around 8:30, bringing the plastic bags down to PJ. He hands them out, he organizes the whole thing. And at the end, I'm gonna find out where the aluminum cans are gonna be and we'll transport them back and forth if necessary.
Did you get did we get our name on there? On the posters?
I believe we did. I
hope
haven't
so.
even looked at it.
I haven't looked.
I haven't seen them either.
I haven't seen anything on the social media postings about the cleanup day. I've seen-
There is a flyer going around.
I haven't
yeah.
seen even the flyers, which usually,
Fire is posted out here.
Yeah, it's actually, now that I think about it, it is posted out here. I hope our name is on there.
it better, and they
Yeah.
donate. I'll be right back.
Well, Gunter's gonna make sure it's public
Well, tomorrow,
tomorrow.
it's public,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
PJ and I will, along with Steve Smith, will make a nice presentation.
There have been some other outfits that have had their names on along with the rec center and stuff,
for the
doing the
cleanup.
cleanup, on the social media posts. I haven't seen us on any of the social media posts.
I didn't see it. I don't know where. It's all right, we can find it after.
Yeah, I saw
Thank
it on the
you.
way in.
I did, I'm like,
I don't remember where, but. So anybody that wants to pitch in, just come down and we'll figure it out when we get down there. So,
It's a great project every year.
yeah. And what else? Is there anything else that we need to talk about? Anything new? No? Anybody want to add anything?
One thing I have, I'm out at the county complex from time to time, and Lionel Shute, who is the administrator for the Sullivan County Conservation District, said that he'd like to be an invited guest sometime to come up and
It's a great idea.
talk to us and let us know what they do and what they might be able to do for us or in collaboration, but, an informational presentation like this one tonight.
Okay. So do we want to schedule them? Would that be,
I would say at this point, just to let you know that that's out there as an information thing. If it sounds interesting, I think I should go back to Lionel and then have him work with maybe Ken or somebody to work out a time.
10 days?
Yeah,
Okay, I don't know how often Kenny's gonna be here from now on.
okay. Well, certainly we could call you and
Absolutely.
work out
And we could schedule, I could give them the meetings for the remainder of the year. If you can't make any of them, obviously, we could shift a meeting, as long as I post it. That if he, sometimes, like, even once summer's over, people are more free. Sometimes getting speakers in the middle, July and August, you always wonder, so many vacations. Maybe, and
Okay. Well, I can handle that. I just, if there seems to be some interest from the board.
Sure,
from
I think it would be a
commission,
great idea.
I'll go back to Lionel and try to facilitate that.
So you'll report back to us at the next meeting?
I will.
Okay. All right, Larry. Thank you. Okay, anything else?
Did you have anything under admin? Yeah, I know you asked.
the only thing I did was the donations, and then I'll start sending the requested information if I miss anything, and I know, again, Herb usually keeps me in line. Christina, we requested mapping or something, but I've got it written here, but I can feed you information, obviously, whatever you want prior to the next meeting, via email.
Excellent. That's good.
And anyone that wants to come and get the books that have to walk the lands and the tags, whether you just even keep them in your car, again, if you really see a marker, I think it'd be pretty safe. You could always take the tags back down, but pretty safe to if you wanted to mark something. I have a lot of them.
Let's see what we can do with Cliff first. I'll see what I can do as far as getting him out. Okay, do we have a
Motion that we adjourn.
second?
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.